All right, welcome back. Morgan and Jerome both pointing out on our Super League B logs there, but let's quickly take a look then at the logs and talk our way through it. Kraaifontein sitting at number 1 on the log. Sorry, Ackling. Kraaifontein sitting at number 1 on the log, followed by Primrose. They're, of course, in a second place. Goodwood in third, followed by Belhar, Franschhoek and Collegians. Now those bring up your top 6. And then it's Macassar, NTK, Belleville, Hamlets, CPUD, Hamadias, bottom of the log there, and they'll be concerned is, of course, Vineyards, Hands and Hearts, and Kylemore. All right, Jerome, you were talking about it earlier on, about some of those positions, but you mentioned earlier on, big jump for Belleville. They're now at the middle of the table. They can breathe a little bit easier. Guys at the bottom, Vineyards, Hands and Hearts, Kylemore, they're going to be a little bit worried. Hamadias has still got games in hand. CPT, games in hand. Hamlets, games in hand. There's still a lot of movement potentially here.
There's still, if you look at, Belleville, they on 12, Vineyards 11, Ensenada, that bottom. So anything can still happen. So you can't actually say Belleville can relax because they have to get a point or two out of games that they play now to make sure that, because anything can still happen.
So here's the thing though, Morgan. For people who are looking at the log, they might be mistakenly saying, well, we've only got 3 games left and the 3 games will take a month. But in reality, after that, it'll be the top 6. And then the log will be all forgotten. And people will be playing in the top 6, which will become the top of the mind on a daily basis. And then for the next 6 weeks, it'll be about those matches, or 4 weeks, 5 weeks of what's happening in the top 6. And everything we're talking about in the log here will be history. It'll be either whether or not you're in the game or not in the game.
Yeah, look, I think it's a case, it's twofold, because I think what you must remember is, if you take Super League B, for example, the top 2 teams don't play a quarterfinal. So whether you want to play a quarterfinal or not is up for debate. You almost want to keep the momentum going. You've got 3 more league games left. Then, if you're top 2, you don't play, so you technically have a bye that weekend, which is not necessarily good for many teams because you want to play week in, week out. And then if you have a bye, you finish top 2. You're only going to win 1 more game to get promoted to Super League A.
Yeah, but it's 5 or 6 weeks of rugby.
But it is 5 or 6 weeks of rugby. So to keep the boys focused on the task at hand and not looking at the log too much is a big challenge.
Is, if we just go the other way, what's more, though, is that the teams at the bottom of the log, those that are playing position 13, Jerome, is still having to stay on track because they're going to be fighting it out with the team below them to make sure they don't actually get relegated. So even though the log, it looks like it's fading out, the fact is club rugby still has a long way to go this year.
Yeah, in like the bottom 6, they fine, but like you say, the guys down from 7 down, they still have a lot to play for. Like, you don't want to go down. You rather want to stay in Super B because it's a good league, it's a tough league, but you don't want to, because then your club lose interest, you lose players. So there's a lot to play for.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea. We've always said it, play as much rugby as possible for as long as possible so that you can keep your fans active, keep your players active, but keep your sponsors active. And Morgan, this is the other thing maybe that people don't understand, is that if you're not playing rugby, your sponsors don't have legs. There's no exposure. So you've got to play as much rugby for as long as possible if you want to bring value to your sponsors. Otherwise, your sponsors are only limited to game time exposure. So the less games you play, the less fun runs you have, the less chance you have of sponsorship.
Yeah, that's why, you're going to laugh now, but that's why I was such an advocate, such a fan of the way it was played. Because previously you used to play 20 to 30 games a season.
Home and away.
Pre-season games, home and away, the top 10 thing. It's 18 games for the year, plus all your pre-season friendlies. You're looking at 25 games for the year. So it has changed quite a lot, but look, there are pros and cons in it all, right? And hindsight's probably the perfect science. So it is quite sad to think that in a month's time, we're probably done with club rugby, and there's still so much that we can do. It is going to move into the 7s. I know that the 7s are coming up, and we're going to put quite a lot of focus on that. But to play more 15s would be nice.
All right, folks, let's take a look at the other results that came in this weekend. Of course, in Super League C, All Saints 53-30 over Peninsula Villages. Atlantis 49-22 over Strand. Lunga 40-17 over Scottsdene. Caledonian Roses went down to Violets. Gardens with a win over Young Peoples. And then Delft with a win over Easter. One of the major challenges, or not challenges, but one of the major sections we've been looking at is talking about the Challenge Cup. Right, folks, now the Challenge Cup is, of course, split into 4 different pools, Pool A, B, C, and D, and the Challenge Cup is the bottom part of the Promotion League. We'll look at the results in a second, but the Challenge Cup, very exciting, of course, a challenge and literally a league, a competition on its own. Whistling Wheels then went down to Silverleaf this past weekend, 23-19. Laguna, 12-10 over Temperance and Cities. Young Wesley's with a win over Silvertree. Vintmill United with a 38-22 win over Blakes. Kailicha went down just narrowly to Titans. Fora and Stelkor, 17 all. And then Young Stars went down to Northerns. And then Police, well, they went down to Blackheath this past weekend. All right, folks, we'll talk about the Challenge Cup in a second. Let's quickly show you a little clip that came in from Peninsula. This was amazing bit of footage of one of our Challenge Cup fixtures. Take a look at this. All right, folks, I've just got to highlight that. Jerome, you'll know the Challenge Cup teams, Morgs, you as well, Whistling Wheels, Laguna, Temperance and Cities, Vintmill United, Peninsula, Retreat. These are all guys that are playing in the Challenge Cup. That was the match between Police and Blackheath this past weekend. But, you know, it really just highlights for me a little bit about community rugby, what Western Province Club Rugby is all about. Look at that amazing facility there, Morgs.
No, James, you know, I'm looking at that, and I was very fortunate to be overseas, whatever, a couple of weeks ago, playing. And it's wild to think the scenery and the settings that we have in Cape Town to play rugby in. I mean, it's absolutely, that blows my mind. I mean, look at that. You see the mountain in the background. People travel all over the world to come and look at that mountain. Yeah, we're playing rugby at the foot of it.
We keep comparing ourselves to other sports, but you look at that, Jerome, and you got to think it's all here, and it's across our teams, which is why it makes it so exciting to talk about the Challenge Cup.
No, it is. And another field, like if you go to Massey,
you're
almost like right there at the sea.
Yeah,
like,
and gardens.
So
if you go,
it's amazing. Yeah, if you
Solari's
go to Strand, like
Stelkor. You go up the Iris Valley, or you go to
France
the top of France. 100% amazing venue. So, folks, in from Leslie Cannery, and just to give you a little bit of information, that was of course at Suntvlei Peninsula versus Blackheath. Conversion there by number 10, Byron McKenzie. And Peninsula won that game 43 points to 7, and they got all 5 points on the log. So congratulations then to Peninsula, but great talking about our Challenge Cup as we go along. Right, let's quickly take a look then at the results in the Promotion League. And it was Wraithby with a win over Fisanta Kraal, 43-24. Watsonia, 29-24 over Silurians. And then, of course, Masi Pumalele with a win over Morningstar. The Challenge Cup itself, of course, rolling out at the moment, very exciting. But Jerome, when we're talking about club rugby there on the Promotion League, as those teams we were obviously talking about now, they will know that for them it's everything to play for because they want to get into Super League C. And we know that those teams are going to be giving it hammer and tong for the next couple of weeks still.
Yeah, they definitely will because there's a lot to play for. If you look at what Delft did last year and where they are now.
Yeah.
So they are competitive still. So the guys can be competitive if they come up into Super League C.
Morgs, you've got 20 seconds, but basically when you're in that space, I think you were saying it earlier on, you've got to stick to the basics. You want to remind people about the basics.
Yeah, you know, it's very easy to get carried away in the bright lights of trying to get this promotion. All that. If you lose track of the task at hand, which is the 80 minutes, and you've got to perform, and you've got to perform well.
Yeah. Jerome, I think we're going to be saying goodbye to you at this stage. Your plans for the rugby weekend?
Yeah, look, I think the fields are going to be dry, so no games will be cancelled. So there's a few games, quite nice games to go and have a look at. All
right, folks. Of course, Jerome Pardevar joins us again next week, and will guide us through with pearls of wisdom in the world of club rugby next week. So make sure you come back, Jerome. We'll have your seat is waiting for you. Murray Ingram joins us after the break. Don't go away, folks. Back in a sec.